Can concepts be objective? Obviously, a concept is something that has originated from a mind. It's an abstract idea rather than something with any sort of physical presence. Now, moving away from some people that might say that there is some ontological presence in another realm, let's just suppose there isn't, and still ask the question, can the concept be objective? Now, first of all, we'd probably have to discuss what we mean by objective. And there's a few different ways objective can be used as well, as I'm sure you know. If objective is being used in the sense of an objective, then concepts do tend to have an objective. They're trying to explain something. They have that sort of purpose, end goal in mind. So from that perspective, yes, they all have an objective, but that's generally not what people mean. They tend to mean something that is above personal opinion, something that won't change based on personal opinion. It is true regardless of your opinion, for example. An easy one to lean on, perhaps, is the idea of law. Now, law is obviously relative to each country and sometimes each state. But for the people within that state or country, it is above their opinion. If they disagree with the law, that won't change the law. There's a large process they'd have to go through. So law as a concept and the individual laws are objective, even though it's not really real in the ontological sense of, say, a tree is real. In fact, we could say that the law has at least two kinds of objective, because the laws and the concept of law are above your opinion, but also law has the purpose of trying to keep order in a particular society. So even if we were to say law and laws in their original conception are entirely subjective things, it was someone's idea, over time they have been built into a system that has become objective. But perhaps we should use something even more out there. For example, numbers or the rules of logic. These things do not exist without a mind. They are a way of describing things. You know, for example, if we see a single rock, one unit of rock, and we say one rock, the number one is an accurate descriptor, but it doesn't actually exist. Yet it is objective. Now, even if we met a culture that had the number one, even if they use the same figure and everything like that, but to them it meant 5, that wouldn't mean that one is no longer objective. It's just a different referent, a different language that we're speaking. So from that perspective, the number 1, or any number, does have a form of objectivity to it. It wouldn't exist without minds creating the language to describe it, but it does have a form of objectivity, even if it's not physically real. The same can be said for the rules of logic, and in fact, we could even say the same for things like the scientific method. It's something that has evolved throughout the millennia. Some people might even say plants do science. But speaking more seriously, we can actually see that this method has a form of objectivity to it. In fact, there's different methods you might use for different applications, and these themselves could be argued to all be different objective standards. So again, we're in a place where we have a form of objectivity. Disagreeing with any of these standards doesn't make them less objective. It makes you wrong. If someone was to point at the number 1 and say that's a 5, we would say that they are wrong. If someone was to read the scientific method and say, I don't think we should do it that way, I think we should just stick a finger in the air, and that's the scientific method, they would be wrong. So, again, you can be wrong about these things. And I think this is something that is forgotten when people are having conversations about conceptual things. Some people might go in with the idea of anything that is a concept is from a mind and is therefore necessarily subjective. But they would then argue that other concepts are objective. It's far more complicated than a simple subjective versus objective thing. And in fact, we shouldn't really use subjective in the sense of from a mind when we're discussing concepts. What we're talking about there is it being based wholly on personal opinion, and the truth maker comes from within.